These legendary actresses made even the most confident TV hosts sweat with regret on live television. But what went so wrong? What exactly did they say that left hosts stammering, red-faced, or even walking off set? In this video, we break down 5 unforgettable interviews where old-school famous actresses flipped the script and burned bridges on live TV. Helen Mirren's defiant moment on BBC's Parkinson, 1975. Helen Mirren's 1975 appearance on BBC's Parkinson stands out as a turning point in celebrity interviews. At just 30 years old, Mirren was gaining recognition for her work with the Royal Shakespeare Company. Yet, when she sat down with Michael Parkinson, the conversation quickly revealed how female performers were often treated on television during that era. Parkinson began the interview by calling attention to a critic's description of Mirren as the sex queen of the Royal Shakespeare Company. Instead of focusing on her acting achievements or her approach to complex roles, he steered the discussion toward her appearance. He asked if her physical attributes made it difficult for audiences to take her seriously as an actress, a question that reflected the attitudes many women faced in the entertainment industry at the time. The moment was uncomfortable, not because it was unusual, but because it so clearly laid bare the bias that lingered in the industry. Mirren kept her composure and responded with a mix of calm and wit. She didn't accept the framing of the question and instead challenged the idea that her body was the main reason for her success. When Parkinson pressed the point, Mirren replied, "What a crummy performance if it's just because of my body." She made it clear that her craft was rooted in skill and dedication, not just physical appearance. Without raising her voice or showing anger, she redirected the conversation back to her work, making it clear that she was not there to be reduced to a stereotype. Throughout the interview, Mirren calmly dismantled his premise by redirecting the focus back to her craft, using measured wit rather than anger. Parkinson, who was known for his confident interviewing style, appeared unsettled as Mirren refused to play along with his assumptions. The tension was noticeable, and viewers at home and in the studio sensed that something important was happening. Many sided with Mirren's composure and appreciated her ability to stand her ground in an environment that often favored the host. By the end of the segment, Mirren had set a new standard for how actresses could assert themselves on live television. She didn't allow outdated ideas to dominate the conversation and showed that it was possible to challenge the status quo without losing control or resorting to confrontation. The interview became a touchstone for changing attitudes, as more people began to question why women were so often asked to defend their credibility in public. This wasn't the last time a performer would refuse to let the moment pass quietly. Sometimes, speaking up meant taking a risk far beyond the television studio, especially when the stakes were national and the audience included some of the most powerful figures in history. Eartha Kitt's bold stance at the White House luncheon. Eartha Kitt's boldness at the White House luncheon in 1968 stands out as one of the most memorable moments of her career. Invited to attend the Women Doers event hosted by First Lady Lady Bird Johnson, Kitt arrived expecting a discussion about juvenile delinquency. Instead, when given the floor, she chose to address what she saw as the root of so much unrest among America's youth: the Vietnam War. Kitt's remarks were direct and unwavering. She told the assembled guests, "You send the best of this country off to be shot and maimed. They rebel in the street. They will take pot, and they will get high. They don't want to go to school because they're going to be snatched off from their mothers to be shot in Vietnam." Her words cut through the formality of the occasion, leaving the room silent. Kitt didn't soften her message or try to fit in with the polite conversation expected at a White House event. She spoke from her own experience and concern, making it clear that she believed the war was tearing families apart and fueling the very problems the luncheon was meant to address. Lady Bird Johnson, caught off guard, responded, "Just because there is a war going on, I see no reason to be uncivilized." Even Lady Bird Johnson had no ready retort, and the formal luncheon fell silent. Kitt's willingness to challenge the First Lady in such a public setting was rare, especially for a celebrity invited as a guest. Her comments shifted the entire tone of the event and drew national attention, not just for their content, but for the way she delivered them. The consequences for Kitt came quickly. Her remarks led networks and clubs to bar her from US stages for years. Blacklisted in her own country, she was forced to take her career overseas, performing in Europe and Asia while opportunities at home dried up. Declassified records show the CIA monitored her afterward, proof of how seriously her dissent was taken. For Kitt, the backlash was a heavy price, but she never expressed regret. In a 1978 interview, she said, "I don't think there is anything I've done that I wish I hadn't done, because I learn from everything I do." She viewed her choices as part of a lifelong education, regardless of the cost. Eartha Kitt's stance at the White House luncheon remains a powerful example of using a public platform to speak up, even when the risks are high. Her story shows that challenging authority can come at a steep price, but it can also leave a lasting mark on history. Not every confrontation has to be somber, though. Sometimes a different kind of disruption, one that mixes humor with honesty, can turn a tense interview into an unforgettable moment. Shelly Winters steals the spotlight on The Tonight Show. Shelly Winters was no stranger to making an impression, but her 1975 appearance on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson stands out even among her many memorable moments. By then, she was a two-time Academy Award winner, respected for her versatility and her outspokenness both on and off the screen. On this particular night, Winters shared the stage with British actor Oliver Reed, a guest known for his strong opinions and unpredictable energy. The atmosphere was lively from the start, with Winters exchanging sharp banter with both Reed and Carson. The conversation shifted when Reed began to talk about the women's liberation movement. Reed made it clear that he believed a woman's place was in the home, caring for her husband and children, while men belonged in the public sphere. His remarks drew a mix of cheers and groans from the audience. Winters, who had built her career on challenging stereotypes, listened as Reed continued to explain his views. She didn't hide her irritation. Instead, she interrupted with pointed comments and quick jokes, pushing back against Reed's traditional stance. As the discussion went on, the tension between Winters and Reed became more obvious. Reed doubled down on his opinions, and Winters' patience wore thin. Then, in a moment that would become one of the most talked about in late-night television, Winters stood up, walked over to Reed, and poured a glass of whiskey over his head in full view of Carson's NBC audience at home. The act was quick and decisive, and the audience reacted instantly. Cheers and applause filled the studio. Reed, caught off guard but trying not to show it, barely moved as the whiskey dripped down his hair and jacket. He tried to keep the conversation going, starting again with, "I think the women's liberation movement." The crowd's laughter grew even louder. Carson, usually quick with a comeback, took a moment to regain control of the show. The energy in the room had completely shifted, and Winters was at the center of it. This wasn't just a spontaneous outburst. For Winters, it was a clear response to being talked over and dismissed on a subject that mattered to her. She used humor and timing to make a statement, showing that she wouldn't sit quietly while someone else tried to define her or the women she represented. Her actions were bold, but they also fit the persona she had built over decades in Hollywood. Unafraid to speak up and determined not to let anyone else have the last word. The incident quickly became a highlight of Winters' career and a memorable chapter in television history. It showed how easily the usual balance of power between host, guest, and audience could change when someone decided not to play along. The story of Shelly Winters and Oliver Reed remains a reminder of how live television can turn heated words into unforgettable moments. Some interviews, though, take things even further, when frustration turns not just to words, but to action. And the result is a confrontation that no one in the studio or watching at home can forget. Grace Jones's physical confrontation on The Russell Hardy Show. Grace Jones's 1981 appearance on Russell Hardy's British talk show is remembered for a moment that challenged the boundaries of what audiences expected from celebrity interviews. Jones, already a striking figure in music and fashion, brought her signature boldness to the studio that night. The show's informal setup placed Hardy in the center of a long couch, with Jones seated to his side. What began as a typical conversation soon shifted as Hardy repeatedly turned his back on Jones to speak with other guests, leaving her sidelined and visibly frustrated. Jones's presence was never one to fade quietly into the background. As the interview went on, her irritation became clear. She offered pointed remarks and made it obvious through her body language that she felt ignored. The tension was not just a matter of television drama, it was about respect. Jones, who had built her career on rejecting conventional expectations, was not willing to accept being treated as an afterthought, especially on live television. The breaking point came when Jones, after several minutes of being overlooked, reacted in a way that stunned both the studio and viewers at home. She stood up and slapped Hardy. The moment was unscripted and direct, a physical response to what she saw as blatant disrespect. Jones later described her motive plainly, saying, "I was lashing out because I felt he was not being proper." She made it clear that her actions were not the result of being out of control or impaired, but a deliberate statement about how she expected to be treated. In her autobiography, Jones explained that the situation was made worse by several factors, including her own discomfort and the pressures of live television. But she was adamant that her response was about standing up for herself. She wrote, "It takes balls to do that," which could be seen as a little crazy. And then they tried to get me back on the show. The ratings soared. I had done him a favor. They wanted a rematch. It was all so tacky. The aftermath was immediate. Media outlets debated whether Jones's reaction was justified or excessive, and the interview became headline news across the UK. For Jones, this moment was not just about a single interview, but about her ongoing refusal to be diminished or silenced. Her style, music, and public image had always pushed against the limits of what was expected from women in entertainment. This incident on Russell Hardy's show became a defining part of her legacy, reinforcing her reputation as someone who would not quietly accept disrespect, no matter the setting. The fallout from the interview extended beyond the studio, sparking conversations about the treatment of celebrities, especially women, on television. Jones's willingness to confront what she saw as improper behavior resonated with many, while others saw it as a step too far. Either way, the impact was undeniable, and the moment remains a touchstone for how live television can expose tensions that simmer beneath the surface. Not every response to a host's misstep has to be physical or confrontational. Sometimes a sharp sense of humor is just as effective at shifting the balance of power during an interview. Cher's sharp wit on Late Night with David Letterman. Cher's 1986 appearance on Late Night with David Letterman stands out as a defining moment in talk show history. By this time, Sher was already recognized not just for her music and acting, but for her reputation as someone who spoke her mind without apology. Letterman's show was known for its unpredictable interviews, and the stage was set for an encounter that would be anything but routine. From the start, the energy between Sher and Letterman was tense. Letterman, with his usual irreverent style, pushed boundaries by asking a personal question that many viewers found inappropriate. Instead of sidestepping or giving a rehearsed answer, Sher met the moment head-on. She looked at Letterman and, with perfect timing, called him a jerk. Delivered calmly and without hesitation, the word landed with unmistakable intent. That five-letter punchline gave Sher control and underscored her refusal to be disrespected on live TV. The audience's reaction was immediate. Laughter and applause broke out, highlighting how much viewers appreciated Sher's candor. Letterman, momentarily stunned, scrambled to regain control, proof of Sher's command of the exchange. The mood in the studio shifted. It was clear that Sher was not going to let herself be the subject of an uncomfortable joke. Instead, she turned the tables, using her wit to redirect the conversation and remind everyone that she set her own boundaries. What made this moment so memorable was not just the insult itself, but the way Sher handled the situation. Throughout her career, she had built a persona defined by independence and the ability to challenge anyone who tried to put her in a box. On Letterman's show, she demonstrated that her humor was as sharp as her resolve. She didn't raise her voice or escalate the situation. She simply stated the truth as she saw it, and the room responded. This exchange quickly became one of the most talked about moments in late-night television. It reinforced Sher's image as someone who would not be intimidated or embarrassed, no matter the setting. Letterman later acknowledged how the moment stuck with him, a testament to the impact of Sher's quick thinking and self-assurance. The moment also resonated with viewers, who saw in Sher a reflection of the confidence and assertiveness they admired. Sher's appearance on Late Night with David Letterman is remembered not just for the headline-grabbing remark, but for the way she took control of her own narrative. She showed that being in the spotlight didn't mean accepting disrespect, and that a well-timed response could shift the entire dynamic of an interview. Her ability to keep her composure while making a point set a new standard for celebrity guests. These kinds of moments reveal how much power a single comment or gesture can hold, especially when it comes from someone who refuses to let others define them. These women taught us that talent, humor, and integrity can turn any unexpected moment into a defining statement. Which star's reaction most surprised you? Mirren's wit, Kitt's courage, Winters' theatrics, Jones's defiance, or Sher's comeback? Tell us below.